Well, guys, it seems every day the bar gets lower and lower. First, we have publishing that is so rushed that entire pages are either missing or misprinted. Then we have AI generated book covers, and now, allegedly, a book written by AI. But now, the newest act to join the circus, we have someone who went viral on BookTok for being a man and having an accent, and now, after only 1 month on the platform, he has a 2-book deal with a big 5 publisher. Oh, and did I mention? He hasn't even started writing the book.
I can't wait to write this book.
So without further ado, hello, welcome back. It is a new day, a new sleigh, and a new video where I have something to say, and today we're going to be talking about the Luke Bateman situation. So if you're not on BookTok and you have no idea who I'm talking about, let me give you some context. Luke Bateman is a self-proclaimed fantasy book lover based in Australia. He's a pretty average dude, but one day he was convinced by his friends to join BookTok. Luke Bateman uploaded his first TikTok video on April 22nd of 2025. Within days of uploading this video, he quickly gained over 100,000 followers, and the video currently sits at over 2 million views. Then, less than a week after his first upload, he launched his book club on Fable. And now, a month later, after his very first upload, he has officially announced that he has a book deal with Atria Books, an imprint of Simon Schuster. Now, people already had enough to say when he initially got this massive platform off of one video, but the backlash he's gotten on his announcement video is significantly increased compared to his very first upload. The conversation right now on BookTok is people pointing out that the fact that he was able to do this is predominantly because he's white and good looking. Publishing has always kind of been a boys' club, and it's a lot kinder to people that look like him compared to people of color. And yeah, he didn't build the system, but he's benefiting from it. And while there is a conversation to be had about the inequality in publishing and how some stories are more valued than others, I kind of want to shift the conversation a little. Because a lot of people are quick to say like, oh, I'm sure Luke Bateman is a nice guy, you know, he really likes reading. But what I really want to talk about is him as an influencer, and specifically the choices he's making with his platform. So in this video, I will be analyzing him as an influencer, as a content creator, and kind of breaking down his marketing strategies. I will also be criticizing publishers, the choices they're making, and of course, the overall online bookish community. Because yes, this book deal does play into a greater conversation that publishers have this preconceived notion that stories written by people of color just don't sell as well. And there is a lot to say about the barriers that people of color face in publishing, but I kind of want to talk about something a little different. What I want to talk about is how publishers and influencers are exploiting you, and how every day they get to set the bar lower and lower because people are willing to buy into whatever they're selling. And overall, I want to critique this cycle that we're all feeding into, publishers, influencers, and consumers alike, and how the role we all play is negatively impacting each other. And by the end of this video, I'm going to give some advice, what I think we should do about this book deal and what I think Luke Bateman should do to fix the situation. But the first thing we have to talk about is Luke Bateman himself as the influencer. And there's this very glaring fact that I don't think a lot of people are acknowledging when it comes to him and his content. If you look at all his posts, the ones that have the most engagement are the ones that are talking about romantasy, asking for smut recommendations, and overall just appealing to that smutty side of BookTok. And I hate to break it to you, but he's not making those videos for funsies. He's not just throwing stuff out there and hoping that it'll go viral, which is what I think a lot of people are kind of ignoring. Luke Bateman is not stupid. All of his content is carefully curated. He knows exactly the kinds of reactions he's gonna get by talking about ACOTAR and saying romantasy and things of that nature. Him uploading a video being like, oh my god, the ladies, you guys are so spicy. What do you mean cliterature? He knows how you're going to react to that. He knows you're going to flood the comments, that you're going to share the video, they're going to like it, and you're going to talk about him, which is what he wants. Because like it or not, at the end of the day, he is a content creator, and all of his posts are a part of a marketing strategy. Asking for smut recommendations, reading ACOTAR, and saying other romantasy buzzwords is not an accident. And look, I'm not saying that he's not a genuine reader. I'm sure he does read in his free time, and who knows, maybe he really does like ACOTAR. But two things can be true at the same time. Yeah, he can really like reading romantasy books, and he can also know the kind of reaction he's gonna get by saying that he likes to to read romantasy on BookTok. Guys, I'm gonna need to be really real with you here, and I need you to really listen to me when I say this. Content creators are not stupid. It's the same reason that rage baiters are really famous. It's because they know exactly what they're doing by uploading these videos, and they can predict how you as the viewer will react. Now, I'm not saying that what Luke Bateman is doing is malicious, because everyone rides trends. Talking about something that's trendy, knowing you're going to get engagement, is not a bad thing. All I'm saying is that you just need to be more conscious that it's happening. When you come across content creators, you need to be able to kind of step back and take a look at the whole picture. In his very first video, he even acknowledged that he knew BookTok is dominated by women. He talked about his friends convincing him to join the platform, implying that he knew that he was going to get engagement because he's a conventionally attractive man. I have no doubt that he did post his video with the intention of connecting with other readers, but it wasn't entirely innocent. Like, he knew exactly what would happen, which is why us as viewers have to distinguish Luke Bateman, the influencer, from Luke Bateman, the person. Because yes, these are two different people. The Luke Bateman that his friends and his family sees is not going to be the same person that we see on the internet. No matter how much someone portrays themselves as real or authentic or genuine, they will not be the same person when the camera turns off. And I am not saying that influencers turn into these evil, malicious people as soon as the camera turns off. I just mean that everyone has a different personality. As a content creator, I myself will admit to this. The person I am in front of the camera is very different than the person I am in my day-to-day life. The people that know me joke that I'm Clark Kent because when the camera turns on, I'm a lot more confident, loud, outspoken, a little blunt. But if you met me and ran into me on the street, I'm a lot more shy and reserved. And again, I'm not doing it on purpose. This shift is very much subconscious and was only brought to my attention when people in my life would watch my videos and kind of compare the way that I act when I'm in front of the camera versus just going about my life. So I'm not doing it on purpose. I'm not doing it maliciously, but it's just kind of par for the course when you're making content. You kind of get that distance between who you are and who you're portraying yourself to be. And a lot of times it can be for your own health. So you don't put a lot of your own self-worth and only value yourself based on the kind of views and engagement you get. You can still be real and authentic on the internet while still maintaining that distance. So having a different persona is not a bad thing, but you just have to understand that you are only getting a very specific chunk of someone's life. You are only seeing this very particular version of me that is only a small representation of my entire life. And it's the exact same thing with Luke Bateman. You're only getting part of the whole picture. It's the same with all content creators, and you have to be able to distinguish and know in the back of your mind that there is something you're not seeing. It's important to have this lens when you're examining his content and specifically looking at the choices that he's making, which again, I don't think what he's doing is wrong. He's just riding trends. Who can fault him for that? What I take issue with is his book deal and what that could mean for the future of publishing. Because if they really go through with this, if they actually publish the book and people buy it and it's successful, then they will do it again. And I'm gonna have to say this with my whole chest. We cannot allow them to do this again. Right now, these publishers are experimenting. They're waiting to see how we will react as consumers. So the actions we take now will determine the outcome and the future of publishing. So please, I beg you, do not buy the book. Now, before everyone floods the comments saying that I'm a hater, hear me out for a second. The reason I'm saying don't buy the book is because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, I've never been more certain about anything in my life that the book is going to be bad. Now, I'm not trying to speak to his skill level. I don't know this man. For all I know, he could be the best writer of this generation. He could very well be the reincarnation of William Shakespeare, and it still wouldn't matter. Because what I'm saying is that no amount of skill in the world can make up for a lack of time. The 2-year timeline for publishing books is not just for funsies. The publishing process is incredibly involved. There's so many steps, so many obstacles you have to clear before you get the finished product. There is a reason that you start a book deal with a mostly complete, if not fully finished, first draft. Because in that 2-year timeline, you still have to go through multiple rounds of editing. You have to put it through proofreaders, and that's not even mentioning the processes that don't directly involve the author. I'm talking about figuring out where the paper is going to be printed, where the book is going to be bound, who's designing the cover, negotiating exclusives with retailers, figuring out quantities, and a whole lot of other stuff that you don't even consider. There are a lot of different people that are involved in the publishing process, and it is time consuming. Yeah, you can expedite the process, but needless to say, you're gonna get what you pay for. The 2-year timeline is the ideal. That way you can ensure that there is enough time to make sure that you cover all your bases and nothing is overlooked. Believe me, 2 years is a long time to wait for a book. And even then, it's under the best of circumstances when you have a first draft, which, as Luke Bateman himself admitted, he hasn't even started writing the book. Which means that 2-year timeline, which is supposed to be devoted to editing and figuring out logistics, now has to be shortened to account for the fact that he still has to write the book. The only way I would even consider reading this book is if they extend the publish date by 2 years. We should not hear about this book until 2029 at least. That gives him enough time to actually write the book, figure out the story, get a feel for the characters before they even start the editing and publishing process. Let me be the one to tell you that there is one thing that all writers have in common. Whether it's someone like Suzanne Collins or a writer that's just starting out, they all share one thing, and that is that all of their stories start with a first draft. Suzanne Collins is at a point in her career where she just tells them, hey, I have a new Hunger Games story, and they're like, hell yeah, we'll publish it. But they're still gonna edit the first draft. There is no author in existence who would publish a first draft. You know why? Because no one's that good. Something needs to get fixed, no matter how big or small it may be. James Patterson, that man pumps out a book every day, and I guarantee you he's not publishing a first draft. Guys, some of these authors have been in the game for longer than most of us have been alive, and even then, you still need time to edit and go through the proper steps of the publishing process. Luke Bateman is no exception. But as so many people have pointed out, Luke Bateman was simply offered a deal and he took it. Again, don't hate the player, hate the game. The real people we should be angry with are the publishers. The problem I have with publishers leaning too heavily on trends is that there's an obvious shift away from quality and a bigger focus on quantity. The kind of romance books we find on the market today used to be the kind of stories that you could only find on places like Wattpad or AO3. And I'm not saying that in a mean way. I'm saying that publishing has always been kind of a boys' club. There have always been gatekeepers that keep certain themes and stories outside of traditional publishing. It wasn't too long ago where it was rare to find LGBTQ characters in literature. My one and only Hispanic representation in literature used to be Leo Valdez. It used to be revolutionary that he would speak in Spanish in the books. Mind you, it was like the most common Spanish words of all time, and it would only be like mama or mijo. Like anyone in passing would know what those words mean. But back then, that was like the peak of progressiveness in publishing. In the same way that a lot of dark romance stories and otherwise books that focus more on tropes were just not as prevalent in traditional publishing spaces. So people were then forced to create their own stories out of their own passion and love for writing. That's essentially what fanfics are. You want to see something in the mainstream, and when you don't get it, you decide to make it for yourself. But now these stories are entering the mainstream, and people are now paying for what they used to get for free. And of course, I think fanfic writers should get paid for all the work they devote to writing. They should be compensated fairly. But publishing has ruined what once made these stories so beloved by prioritizing profit over substance. Guys, you know you can read smutty books and still have them be good, right? But no, publishers need authors to pump out these books as fast as possible so they can ride on trends. So they'll cut corners and deliver some of the worst garbage known to mankind, knowing that as long as they slap enemies to lovers and she's mine in the tagline, that it will fly off the shelves. And make no mistake, this does a disservice especially to people like Luke Bateman, because I'm sure whatever concept he pitched to Atria, it had to have been somewhat interesting. But the concept is immediately devalued because the thing that sold it was his following and not his own skill or potential. When you have a following, there are so many doors that will open to you. People will just say yes to whatever idea you throw out there. Which, I mean, if he genuinely wants to write a good book, having people constantly give him the green light won't help him improve. Critique is a necessary part of the publishing process, and the role that editors play is so much more than just fixing grammar mistakes. These are the people that will tell you to kill your darlings, and with all the love in their hearts tell you that you need to scrap an entire storyline because it doesn't make sense. It is editors and authors working in tandem that helps create great literature. But that's not what he's going to get. They have a deadline. It needs to publish in 2 years. So they're just going to push the book through errors and plot holes and all. Which again, if he really wants to be a writer and this is his lifelong dream, that's just going to do a disservice to him. Really, it's just going to set him up for failure because when people read the book and say, hey, it's not well written, it's just gonna blow up in his face. But all of this is just part of a greater cycle. Publishers and influencers have to cave to the will of the algorithm, writing trends and throwing stuff at the wall hoping something sticks. But who is it that defines these trends? Yeah, you guys aren't gonna get out of this unscathed. Now I have to talk about consumers, aka us. First, I'm gonna come to our defense. The romance genre has always been heavily stigmatized, as well as any other book that is catered to women. BookTok has kind of become a safe haven, a place where people can talk openly about romance and actively work to destigmatize women's pleasure. It is because of BookTok that we now have popular mainstream titles that talk about safe sex, consent, and focus more on the woman's pleasure, as opposed to previous titles that have grossly misrepresented or over-sexualized women. And like it or not, BookTok is a big reason why bookstores are still standing after the pandemic. So to all the men that can now walk into a bookstore and pick up Atomic Habits or the latest Dave Ramsey book, you can thank all the women that were reading Icebreaker and Love on the Brain. Now, with that being said, BookTok is also the reason that publishers are appealing to things as superficial as trends to create and promote books. This is where us as the community really need to step up and stand on some kind of business. At some point, we have to say enough is enough and demand what we deserve, which is good quality literature, aka the bare minimum. If we don't stop this now, publishers are just gonna keep going lower and lower, cutting corners and pushing out rushed projects as long as they make some kind of profit. Guys, I beg you, we can't keep letting them get away with this. And simultaneously, we can't let another Luke Bateman situation happen. Now, I'm not saying you can't follow people for being attractive. That's not a new thing, it's not unique to BookTok, and it's not really that weird. But by giving Luke Bateman a platform, you kinda set him up for failure. His following right now is based on something as flimsy as his appearance. Sure, his love of reading does have something to do with his platform, but let's not sit here and pretend that he would still have the same following if he didn't look the way he does. So having people that only really follow him for his appearance then forces him to appeal to said audience and do things that further feed into the audience desire, aka reading ACOTAR and asking for smut recommendations. So what you've essentially done is put him in a box, forcing him only to make content that he knows is going to appeal to his female viewers. And he is not entirely blameless in this situation. He has not built a proper fan base in the month he's been on the platform. So when people rightfully called out publishers and criticized this book deal, he lost part of his already incredibly fragile fan base. And since it seems his whole thing is just writing trends, he will eventually lose his glamour. People will find another attractive dude that reads books. And not if, but when this happens, people will move on. He will lose his stake in the industry and Atria will notice. So then he'll be stuck in a cycle of making content, trying to appeal to romantasy readers and cling on desperately to the influence he once had while simultaneously knowing that he will eventually be replaced. This is a critique on the algorithm and the publishers. Again, what they've done here is blown him up too fast and too quickly. The same thing happened with Chappell Roan. She grew so exponentially overnight, and then when she started saying kind of problematic stuff, she fell epically. The same thing, I fear, will happen to Luke Bateman. This is what these publishers are doing, not just to Luke Bateman, but with other influencers, taking them and just draining them of all their star quality and all of the influence that they have on readers. And then once they've used them for all they're worth, they move on. So then you have this person, Luke Bateman, who genuinely liked reading, genuinely wanted to become a writer, have their dreams crushed because they were set up to fail from the start. So for publishers and consumers, they'll just move on. They'll find their next shiny toy to play with. And then these people that were used for profit are then left behind, leaving people like Luke Bateman to suffer the consequences. So it's up to us as consumers and members of the BookTok community to stop the cycle. If we give in and read this book, all Atria is going to hear is the sound of money hitting their bank account. Even if people are hate reading or leaving awful reviews, they won't care because you still bought the book. And that's why I'm telling you, don't read it. And now my message and advice to Luke Bateman, which he of course didn't ask for. He has no idea who I am. And you know what? That's fine, but I'm going to say my piece anyway, because believe it or not, I am saying this with all the love and care in my heart. I beg you, renegotiate your contract. Ask them for more time. If they're willing to invest after only a month on BookTok, I'm sure that they will listen to whatever you have to say. If you genuinely care about writing, then you will know that you are out of your depth with this. This book that you put out into the world will be a representation of you and who you are as a writer. And do you really want a rush debut? Do you really want them to cut corners and put out anything less than your best work when you've waited your whole life to do this? Obviously, you've done very well for yourself and you have a fan base. And if they're already willing to wait 2 years, I can assure you they're gonna wait a little longer. Don't let these publishers use you. Don't let them put you through the ringer and use you up for all that you're worth while watching you fail because of the choices that they made. This is the BookTok community, and community means that you're connecting with people. The best way to connect with them and continue to grow your platform is by being honest. And you know what? I would love to eventually read a book by Luke Bateman, but it can't be within the next 2 years. Guys, writing is a journey. It's supposed to be fun. Yeah, it can be a little stressful, and yeah, it can make you want to pull your hair out, but people genuinely like writing. And the surefire way to lose your passion is with book deals like this. Contracts that work you to the bone, use you up for all that you're worth just to line the pockets of these publishers. So to Luke, if you care about writing, you'll extend the deal. To the fan base, if you care about him as a person, you won't let the publishers use him like this. And to the publishers, if you care about us as consumers, which that's already a stretch, but in the off chance you do, you won't go through with this book deal. We all play a part in this cycle, and we all have an equal responsibility to stop it. And with that, that's the end of the video. That's all I'm gonna say on the situation for right now. The worst part is that when I saw that this was going on, I wasn't even surprised. I was more surprised at the fact that no one seemed to be raising the alarm that this could be bad for publishing overall, which is why I wanted to make this video. I feel like people are too emotionally invested, and we kind of have to detach and really separate to understand the business model behind all these choices. There were so many people in the comment sections being like, oh my God, you guys are being so mean to him. Like, he's a nice guy. You guys are just haters. And I'm like, I need you to step back for a second and look at the bigger picture here. Because if you love this man, you won't let him do this. Am I slightly annoyed that this is happening? Yeah. Will I be reading the book? Absolutely not. And you know what? I do hope we get a statement from Luke Bateman in the future just to see where he's at with all this. I want to see how he's responding, because so far he uploaded one video and it didn't look like he directly addressed anything, because now that he's gone through this controversy, anything he says afterward, people are gonna be paying more attention. Before, it seemed like he lived in this romantasy bubble where people were just like, oh my God, you're hot, and you read ACOTAR like I love you. But now he's getting other people viewing his content, people that are gonna be more critical of him. So he really needs to address this, and quickly, if he's gonna have any hope of building his fan base in the future. So I'm gonna leave the video on that for now. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what your thoughts on the situation are. If you agree with what I've said, if you disagree, just let it all loose in the comments. I do like to have a discussion, and I'm interested to see where everyone else is at with this whole situation. You can also follow me on all my social media at Listen to Kristen on TikTok, Instagram, and BlueSky. And of course, my Goodreads account where I log all of my progress, the books I'm reading, and my reviews. God, what a way to start Pride Month, am I right? But anyway, that's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hopefully I don't get flamed in the comments.